Blood, Guts, and Thunder, the first web show dedicated exclusively to covering Canadian soccer with a special perspective on the national teams. In Canada and around the world, we're in one heck of a situation. COVID protocols put this entire international window in doubt. The She Believes Cup happened in February, which gave us a bit more optimism, but a whole lot of us were still skeptical if these matches could go on with so much doubt in regards to our European talent. It was especially difficult considering the year-long hiatus we've had on Canadian international play. 5 games in 1 week, 3 Olympic qualifiers and 2 World Cup qualifiers looked like they were about to go out the window, pardon the pun. And yet, we persisted. A 20-man roster arrived in Guadalajara for Olympic qualifiers. There were losses in Thomas Muir-Jaguar and Chris Twardek, and even more who were forced to plug holes in the senior team. But the tournament has gone on, 10-man Haitian teams aside. We've played 2 out of 3 games in the group stage of these Olympic qualifiers. We have 1 more lined up on Thursday in addition to these aforementioned World Cup qualifiers, which will take place on Thursday and Sunday, and whose Canadian squad was announced today with far more European players than we originally expected. It's an exciting time for Canadian soccer fans who have been starved for matches. In 2021, with Olympic qualifiers, World Cup qualifiers, and the Gold Cup, it's likely we will see upwards of 20 games played this year. We've gone from the least eventful year in Canadian soccer history to the most eventful in recent memory. To talk about this, we've got a great guest for you today. It's Michael McColl from Away from the Numbers, which offers a unique and very intimate perspective on Canadian soccer, and often my favorite team, the Vancouver Whitecaps. MLS and national team players like Russell Tabor, Jonathan Osorio, and Lucas Cavallini are common guests, so be sure to check that out. He has also appeared as a commentator for the Whitecaps development side. Michael is here today to talk about how the Olympic qualifiers have gone so far and what we can expect from them later this week. We'll be talking to him after the break.
Feel the crackling. Steam escaping from your taste buds. Burning and yearning in anticipation of hard work paying off. A craft earned and perfected. Hands that give glimpses of guarded family secrets. Taste the air. You dance with the flames. A moth drawn to the lights. The sights attack your eyes like a morning sun. Rising, lifting. Your soul has awakened.
It's an exciting time for Canadian soccer fans who have been starved for matches. In 2021, with Olympic qualifiers, World Cup qualifiers, and the Gold Cup, it's likely we see upwards of 20 games played this year. We've gone from the least eventful year in Canadian soccer history to the most eventful in recent memory. To talk about this, we've got a wonderful guest for you today. It's Michael McColl from Away from the Numbers, which offers a very intimate and unique perspective on Canadian soccer, and often my favorite team, the Vancouver Whitecaps in particular. MLS and national team players like Russell Tabor, Jonathan Osorio, and Lucas Cavallini are common guests, so be sure to check that out. He has also appeared as a commentator for the Whitecaps development side. Michael is here today to talk about how the Olympic qualifiers have gone so far, and what we can expect from the national team later this week. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Keiran. It's a pleasure to join you on your first show.
Yeah. So we've had our first 2 Olympic qualifying games. I don't think you can say they were great. I don't think you can say they were quite terrible. We won the first 2-0 against El Salvador, and we had a tougher game against. Didn't really take our chances, and we ended up with a 0-0 draw. I think this will be right up your alley. We should start with how the Whitecaps on the Canadian Olympic team have done thus far. For me, the one who's really stuck out is Michael Baldissimo, who's been slotting in at that defensive midfielder position. What have you thought of his performances so far?
Very strong performances from him. He's built on the performances that he was turning in for the Whitecaps last year. This is such an important year for Michael because he needs to take the next step now. And to take the next step, he has to be playing, getting that playing time, and being away with Canada. It's going to just be such a boost to his confidence. But he's looked really solid in the middle of the park. He's kind of made things tick there, and he's certainly stood out and impressed.
For sure, his passing range is something else. The way he's made himself into an outlet for this Olympic team, like he may not be as flashy, at least he hasn't been as someone like Tajon Buchanan, but I think he's offering something really special to this Canadian midfield, especially to one that's lost so many players from the TFC outbreak. Now, someone a few people have been more critical of is Theo Bair. He came off the bench in the first game against El Salvador, and in the second one he actually started. But I think it's fair to say he struggled to be that physical presence the Olympic team wanted him to, and he didn't really. He had that one chance where Baldissimo created that through ball for him, but he hasn't really shown that goal scoring or physical presence that I think a lot of people hoped he would provide. Do you have like an alternate? Do you have an alternate perspective, or do you mostly agree with that?
I think he's done not too bad. It's been difficult for him. He's transitioning at the moment from he's been primarily used by the Whitecaps as a winger for so long. He prefers to be the out and out striker. That's now the role that he's gone into. His physicality, I do agree with you. I thought he probably could have been a bit more physical, but I don't know if it's a case of El Salvador and Haiti are expecting that from him as well, and they're just trying to outmuscle him, put a couple of guys on him. He hasn't had a lot of opportunities. He's had to try and be the creator as well a little bit. So I think that's maybe gone against him. I think we've still got to see the best of Theo in this tournament. I think we will. Honduras is certainly going to be a big test because they're going to be a big physical team. We're going to need Theo Bair's physicality in that to kind of really come to the fore. He's a guy, I've watched him for years. I've watched him since he was about 14 or 15 coming through the academy. He's a guy that's always risen to the big occasion. And I think we're going to see that again in the remaining games.
For sure. If he can be that lone striker that Canada needs him to be, that could be something else. Canada's biggest problem going into this tournament, I think, is that we don't have that striker. We were hoping Charles Brim could be something like that, but he's a winger, and to me, he's only looked like a winger. I'm really hoping Bair could provide what we hope. Next, I haven't had quite as much to say about Metcalf or Ryan Raposo. But Metcalf really surprised. The only comment I have, Metcalf did surprise me in that second game, where he almost played the Baldissimo role as a deep lying playmaker, where he was threatening from distance. I thought in a game where not a lot else was going on. Do you have any particular thoughts about those two, Metcalf or Raposo?
Yeah, Metcalf for me, he's a guy as he came through the ranks at the Whitecaps. People kept saying to me that he is one of the best midfielders that the Whitecaps have produced in the program. Like people talk about David Norman, so he was a midfielder in this tournament. He's been playing as a centre back, but when he was coming through, Patrick Metcalf was kind of coming through at the same time, and David Norman was the guy that was getting a lot of the talk and like MLS deals and everything like that. But people kept saying to me, watch Patrick Metcalf. He has got more quality than Norman. He's going to be a guy that in a couple of years is really going to come to the fore. I was a little bit surprised that he got the starts. I wasn't sure whether he would or not, whether he'd come off the bench. I think a lot of it is just having the familiarity, the chemistry with Baldissimo. They've played together a lot. And for a group of guys that haven't been playing much action, they really, really needed to get some chemistry going from the start. So he's done that. Raposo, I thought when he came on against Haiti, he had this spark about him. There was a couple of times that he found himself in a good position. He was maybe a little bit too selfish. But at the same time, you kind of want that from your forwards. You want them to be ambitious and take it on and go for the shot. But at the same time, decision making, there's a couple of times he did keep the ball where a pass would have been better. But I thought he had a pretty good spark when he came on against Haiti, and he was unlucky not to get on the score sheet. He maybe just has to kind of calm down his aggression a little bit. It boiled over a little bit towards the end of the Haiti game. And I think you can be pretty sure that Honduras are really going to kind of be putting their little late tackles in on these guys and trying to get a reaction from Canada in this last game.
That's a good perspective on two players who haven't quite been at the forefront of maybe anyone's attention, but I think they offer something in different ways. And like there's 11 men on the field. It's important to pay attention to how every single person can contribute. I think one of the biggest, it wasn't exactly a snub because it was an injury, but one of the biggest, well, not appearances on this Canadian Olympic team was that of Thomas Hasal, who, in my opinion, has been maybe just behind Dane St. Clair. He's been one of Canada's most promising young goalkeepers. He wasn't at this on this Olympic squad due to injury, and James Pantemis has performed really admirably. How do you think Hasal would have done at this tournament? Do you think he would have been able to handle these conditions, this heat, as well as Pantemis has?
That's an interesting question. I was thinking about this after the game on Monday because, like, Pantemis was just outstanding. The saves that he produced in that second half, how that game finished 0-0, for one thing, is baffling because it could easily, both teams could have had 4 or 5 goals easily, but he pulled off so many saves. So I mean, I was thinking, who would actually have got the start if Hasal had gone? Would it have been Hasal because he'd been playing well for the Whitecaps? He was the keeper that made the most appearances for the Whitecaps last season. I had been looking that up earlier today for something I was working on, and I was surprised at that. But Pantemis did well with Valor, and he's highly thought of in the Montreal system. I don't know who would have got the start. I don't know who would have performed better, but I think now, even like if Canada make it to the Olympics, I think Pantemis is the starting jersey. Even if Hasal's in the team, I don't think you can take it away from him now after the performances he's put up in these first 2 games. He's just been excellent.
For sure. And it's fantastic the extent to which we have this goalkeeper depth now. People were terrified before this tournament about the lack of Dane St. Clair. He's taken up that 3rd spot on the national team now. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Pantemis has really made that spot his own. I remember before this tournament, people were saying Sebastian Breza from Bologna. All due respect to him, he's probably behind 3 keepers at Bologna. People were wondering if they were going to be swapping out games. So it's incredible how quickly these things can change. Now that we're past the Whitecaps, are there any other players who stuck out to you at this tournament who maybe other people haven't been talking about as much?
I mean, the guy that stood out is the guy that everyone's talking about, who's Tejon Buchanan. He's just been great. But I mean, I mentioned David Norman earlier, and I think he deserves a lot of credit because he has not played a competitive game in more than a year. When he was playing with Pacific FC, he left the Whitecaps, went to Pacific FC on loan to the end of the 2019 season, did well there. And I think Pacific would have liked to have maybe kept him, or a few other CPL teams might have had a look at him, but he'd already signed with Inter Miami and MLS. Pre-season, he had a couple of not bad outings. He's had so many injuries the last couple of years. It's really derailed his kind of progress. So he didn't play at all, apart from a couple of pre-season games in 2020. So to come in from that, and you're a midfielder, he can play defensive midfielder, he can play central midfielder, but to then be forced to slot into a centre-back role, which is a role that he's played before. He played it a couple of times with WFC2. Sean Fleming, I know, really wanted to see him play as a centre-back in the under-17s many years ago now as well. But David, he's not a big fan of playing centre-back. He likes to play in the midfield. But he's slotted in really well beside Cornelius. That the loss of Montgomery to that position that was already heavily depleted, it's kind of needs must. They still don't know whether Montgomery's going to do it or not. There was a couple of little lapses by David, I think, in the second half, but then a few of the defenders had that as well. But he had a couple of important blocks, so did Derek Cornelius as well. And I think he's probably benefited. Having Cornelius there, the experienced guy, talking him through it, but I think he has really stood out. Bilou Tabla's had some good bursts, mainly in the first game against El Salvador. Bit disappointed that he maybe didn't start the second game, but he looked sharp at times when he came off the bench. But I mean, all these guys, the big question now is, do you run them into the ground and play them again for this third game? Or do you try and rotate it up a little bit? There's no room for error now. Depending how results go, I mean, Canada could lose this, and with the other two games being a draw on Monday, depending on goal difference and whoever wins between Haiti and El Salvador, Canada all of a sudden could find themselves third in the group. So they have to put a strong team out there. The risk of doing that then is they've nothing left when it gets to the big semi-final game.
Yeah, and that's gonna be a big one against Mexico or the United States. Something that you point out is that like a lot of people on this, a lot of players on this team just didn't have a lot of professional experience going in. You mentioned Norman, and we just talked about Raposo and Metcalf. Brim and Tabla haven't played a lot recently, and like surprisingly, the problems have been there, but I don't think fitness has been the problem. Like it feels a lot more tactical.
Mm-hmm.
Now, just moving on from players, I'd like to look at performances for the entire team. Reactions were mixed even after the El Salvador win. I mean, a lot of people weren't sure that we quite played well. Buchanan had his 2 goals, but we made a lot of errors at the back with defensive outlets. Maybe Cornelius and Montgomery weren't the most effective outlet options coming out of the back. But what do you think? What do you think went right against El Salvador, and what do you think went wrong against Haiti?
I think against El Salvador, getting the 2 goals early on in the game and so close together really helped. There was a moment after they went 2-0 up where El Salvador had a great chance and Pantemis came up with a big save. I think if that had gone in and it was 2-1, that could have been a whole different remainder of the game. But that 2-goal lead, it let Canada settle and it let them find their rhythm. And I think you're looking at 2 teams in that very first game. It was their first game of the tournament. They're getting used to the conditions. They're getting used to chemistry with teammates that they've maybe not seen before or played with, Canada especially. It wasn't great against El Salvador, but at times it was better than I expected. Now, against Haiti, I thought they started really strong, but the big difference was they didn't get that breakthrough. They pushed really hard the first 5-10 minutes. I think if they'd got the early goal, again, things would have been very, very different. A lot of luck in the Haiti game, as well as good saves, because there was a couple of balls that just came right across the goal, and there was just no Haiti player to put it away. But then at the same time, Canada had chances as well, and there was nobody to put those away as well. So finishing for teams was poor. I think against Haiti, though, because everything that happened in that first game, they only had the 10 players, they had an outfield player in goal and everything like that. They were rested. They had more in their legs, and that showed in the second half. Because whatever that halftime team talk was from the Haitian coach, it was clearly, look, your tournament's on the line here. If you lose, you're basically out of the tournament. So they had to bring it in the second half. And I know on paper, folk all look and say, Canada should be beating teams like Haiti. Canada should be beating teams like El Salvador. We don't really know what young guys are coming through in other countries. And I think Haiti's shown at senior level. You just have to look at the last Gold Cup. There's a good program coming through there. And if you've got guys that's a bit more rested, maybe got a bit more chemistry together, they're going to play a lot better. This third game against Honduras, it's what team turns up. Do we get the first half against Haiti for the whole game, or do we get the team that played the second half against Haiti that was on the back foot for most of the time? I don't think Honduras are that great a side. I think they showed that in the El Salvador game. 3-0 against Haiti, can't take anything from that. It's a tough one to know, but I think the chemistry's getting there, the rhythm's getting there, and that's what Mauro Biello talked a lot about in his press conferences in the build-up to these first two games, finding this rhythm. And whatever team is hitting their stride at the right time is the team that's not only going to go through, but it's also got a good chance in the semi-finals. Because I don't think the US have hit their rhythm either. Mexico are Mexico. That's the team you want to avoid. So you have to beat Honduras, I think, to avoid Mexico in the semi-finals.
And that's actually my final question. If you're Mauro Biello, what do you emphasize? What do you do in this Haiti game? Like, what lessons do you take from these first two games that we can apply here?
I think it's like it's an old cliche, but the best form of defense is to attack. So you just have to keep the ball out of your box for as much as possible. Now, it would be good to get Callum Montgomery back, because I think against Honduras, definitely if they make it through to the semi-finals, you need a centre-back pairing that are both centre-backs and can play together. And as much as I was praising David Norman there, he isn't a centre-back. So you really, really could do with having Montgomery back. And if you don't have him back, you need your defensive midfielders to be a very strong shield and to keep Honduras at bay. The other thing as well is Honduras are going to do what these teams do in CONCACAF. They're going to try and win fouls at the end of the box. They're going to be embellishing. They're going to be going down, seeing what they can win. Canada cannot afford to give up too many free kicks in and around the box. As good as Pantemis has been, there's only so much you can do with a really good free kick coming in at you. The flip side of that is Canada can't get drawn into stuff. They can't let Honduras get under their skin. They can't react to little kicks or off-the-ball nudges. There's been a lot of that on Tajon Buchanan. He's had a lot of attention off the ball. He kind of talked a little bit about that in one of his post press conferences as well. So he's going to get a lot of attention. So the guys like him that's going to get the attention, that's going to free up somebody else. So you need to, I'd maybe bring Raposo in, because I like what I saw. He's fresh. He's got that spark. An early goal in this is huge. And I think Canada just have to go for it. If they sit back wanting to hit on the counter and they're too scared about giving a goal up, this could really go off the rails quickly for them.
Michael, I want to thank you for coming on here. Really appreciate the responses you've given. Yeah, there hasn't been, like with the mix with the senior team, I don't think there's been enough attention on this Olympic tournament. And it's great to get into the tactics, to get into who's performing, who's not. Yeah, I really appreciate your perspective.
Thanks for having me on, Keiran, and good luck with your show.
Thanks a lot.
Feel the crackling. Steam escaping from your taste buds. Burning and yearning in anticipation of hard work paying off. A craft earned and perfected. Hands that give glimpses of guarded family secrets. Taste the air. You dance with the flames. A moth drawn to the lights. The sights attack your eyes like a morning sun. Rising, lifting. Your soul has awakened.
Thank you for tuning in to our first episode of Blood, Guts, and Thunder. You can find Michael McColl's work online at AFTN.ca. That's AFTN.ca. You can find us on Twitter at BGTLive86. That's BGTLIVE86. Or we'll post the occasional hot take. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to many more episodes in the future.